Hi, I'm Kelly Kearney with Starry Constellation Magazine. And music fans, we got a treat for you today, taking time out of his busy schedule to talk about his new single, I've Got to Change or I'm Gonna Die. Welcome, Ron Pope. Thanks for talking with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Ron, this new single you have out, I've Got to Change or I'm Gonna Die. Maybe a lot of fans know what that song was inspired by, but talk a little bit about that for the fans that don't know. What got you writing that song?
I'm not usually a topical songwriter. I don't generally sit down with a specific, idea in mind, like, oh, I'm going to write a song about this specific thing. But the opioid epidemic, I just watched it, hurt so many good people that I know. And as I'm sure so many people have, it's impacted, millions of people. And it just really made me so upset. The idea that these multi-billion dollar pharma corporations, they can operate functionally like cartels, and they could influence policy, and they lied to our doctors about the fact that these drugs are, they said they weren't addictive, and in fact they were very addictive. And so they just got all these people hooked on drugs, took so many people's lives, they ruined so many communities, and nobody got in trouble. Like, no, I mean, they fined very rich people and made them less very rich, but still very rich. They didn't materially impact anyone's life, and no one went to prison at the highest levels. And it all felt so morally bankrupt to me. And so, I was just so outraged. And so I wrote, I Got to Change or I'm Going to Die, in response to that. But it's sort of, it's a hopeful song in the end. It's, following someone who's fighting addiction. And, I know a lot of people like this that, have, they're doing their best every day to get up and go to work and take care of their kids, and are struggling with addiction. And the opioid crisis really opened up an avenue for a lot of people to be buying street drugs, as well as their addictions blossomed through this. It's just a terrible, terrible situation. And so that's where the song stems from. But I wanted it to feel hopeful. So it's there's hope in it, because without hope, where are we?
So true. And also, wasn't there an injury that sort of uh, opened your mind to what was happening? I mean, obviously, everybody knows about the opioid epidemic because it's a hot topic on the news. But when you were faced with an injury, and you kind of were like, "Oh, okay, now I understand a little bit more."
Yeah, I hurt my back a few years ago very badly, and I had chronic pain for the first time in a very long time, where every day I woke up and I was in pain. I was in pain all day. I was in pain when I went to sleep, and it's miserable. It gnaws at your ability to live your life.
Yeah.
It's at the edges of everything with its teeth in you. It's a horrible thing. And obviously, at the point that I had this injury, we knew already, that these opioids were highly, highly addictive. And I have in the past had a propensity to like drugs too much, and that's something that I'm conscious of. And so I was like, I'm not going to take these, because it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Even just a few days of these is scary to me. And so, I had to, like, luckily I had the time and the ability and the resources to go. Like, I went to physical therapy, sometimes 4 days a week, and I was doing the exercises at home, and I had time and, the ability to take off of work for months. Like, I had a summer full of tour dates that I had to cancel. Because, like, not only could I not get on the stage and move around, but I also couldn't sit on an airplane to go somewhere to go play these shows. I couldn't, ride around on a bus. I couldn't do, these things that are fundamental to my job. And, like, what happens to people who can't make those choices? And
Right.
that
Right.
that, that was something that I was very, very conscious of through that process. It really did make me think about it in a whole different light. Like, there's nothing quite like being in pain all the time to change your perspective. They say, like, if you don't have your health, what do you have? And it really, every minute of every day thinking about, ow, ow, oh, ow, darn, oh man, like, feeling
Yeah.
that all day is it really does zap your life force, your ability to move through the day and feel anything other than your focus is pointed on your discomfort. It's hard to look at anything else when you're in
Right.
every minute of every day.
And it makes you a little desperate. And like you said, you had time and and the ability to do physical therapy and take a break. Not everyone has that, and the desperation kicks in, and I think that's maybe some of the leading cause of opiate addiction is economic things and desperation, and also how easy it is to get those medications from doctors. Let's talk about the single though. Your Nashville roots come through, I feel like, in this song a lot. It kind of leans a little bit more into this hardworking American grit. The lyrics have that. It has a little bit of a Nashville feel. Was that something that happened organically when you were writing it? Because it does seem very much, not that the opiate addiction crisis isn't in every state, but it really seems centered in the middle of America, in the South. So did it feel like the right lean for this song into the country roots?
I don't know. I mean, I'm a blue collar kid. I grew up, my grandparents' house. My grandfather was a plumber, and he had a broken arm. He, woke up and got dressed and he went to work. He broke his ankle. He woke up and he went to work. And that's something that definitely, permeates every part of the music that I was exposed to, the way that I tell stories. And so I'm not sure if there's, I mean, honestly, Nashville's a big city, and it's like, I think big cities in the South are like big cities anywhere else, I would say. It's not like it's like I'm not like living on a farm. I live like I can walk to the grocery store and to get
Right.
to get a $7 latte from my house. So it's it's like it's a I don't know if it's so much where I live, or if it's just function of all this stuff is in there. It's I was exposed as a kid to American music as such a broad thing. Like it wasn't like I wasn't shown blues and then like you make blues, or shown country. I was playing in a bar band, and places with these roadhouses with tin roofs, and people watching sports on the TV in the back, and we played country music, and we played old R&B songs, and we played blues, and all these giant river that is American music. There's lots of these little tributaries, and I have poked around in all of them. And so on this record, I've got my bluegrass friends playing, I've got my country friends playing, and rock band folks playing, and all different sorts of people that are older than me, people that are younger than me. And it's this confluence of all of these things that to me genres are really about like selling stuff.
Yeah,
and
where to stick you to make it sell, right?
Yeah, selling things, and like discriminating to some extent, and like who you exclude from a space. And to me, it's like, I grew up knowing that like Dwayne Allman played on Aretha Franklin recordings. And so it's like, if you like the Allman Brothers, then you also you're pointed at this soul music. And if you like this soul music, then you might like some of the Allman Brothers, and like all of that. There's this, especially growing up playing music in the South, it's like I was exposed to all of these things, and they're all part of the same story. And so to me, it's like any part of that might poke out at any time in any of my, like if you hear me singing something that sounds like a modern take on what the Carter family might have done, well, that's in there, and it's all to me kind of part of the story of American music, which I am I feel like it's like a small little, I'm a little paragraph in that very large book. And so that's why sometimes it sounds like it does. You never know.
Absolutely. I mean, American music is a result of a melting pot of this country, right? I mean, we're as diverse as the music we listen to, the TV that we watch. That makes sense. Besides your injury, though, what was the hardest part for you as an artist, kind of being forced out of your career and your creativity, that your outlet for your creativity, and you had to kind of slow down and take stock of your life? What was the part that was the hardest? Did you get a little stir crazy during that time?
I mean, honestly, it was just being in pain constantly, because normally my brain is focused on those things, on, on creating art, on, I have this incredible passion for the guitar. I've been playing guitar since I was a kid, and it is my trade. And it's a thing that I point my focus towards, and it allows me to it's something that's within my control. It's like there's lots of things within the music business that you can't control,
Right.
but when I can sit and practice and focus on my playing, that's something that is within my control. Well, it hurt to sit and hold my guitar. It was uncomfortable to do everything. And so my mind couldn't move to the place where I created music. I couldn't sit down and practice my instrument. I couldn't go on the road. I couldn't think about when I might go back on the road again, or when we would make another record or anything. Everything was clouded with this constant fog of pain and discomfort. And it really, it took away my ability to think about all of these other things that tend to be the center of my creative and professional life. And that, it takes a lot of the joy out of living. I really, this is my job, but it's full of all these things that used to be my hobbies. I was interested in making music and playing, I was interested in writing songs. I was interested in making records. I was interested in all that. And they were, these were things that I did because I loved them. And then they became a part of my job also.
Right.
And so I lost both those things that were incredible passions of mine and, my actual job. And so that was, it was a very strange thing, because I had never been in a position like that before. Thankfully, as an adult, I have never had any other injuries so debilitating that I couldn't do anything. Like at some point I hurt my leg and I couldn't play for a while. I hurt like my ankle. I couldn't play for quite some time. I couldn't get on stage because I couldn't really stand up, and I had to go to physical therapy for that. But I could still sit and play guitar. I could still write songs. It wasn't as if all the things that are, that come together to be what I do every day, they weren't all taken away from me. It was just like, I couldn't play. I couldn't, run around.
Right.
This was really a big kind of whole life, all encompassing nightmare of sorts.
I feel like art always comes from those sort of moments where you're overwhelmed by the unpredictable, you're overwhelmed by pain. And some of the best art comes from that. I really enjoyed this song. I've been playing it a lot. It's getting stuck in my head a little bit. Besides I was going to say, the song is a kind of a step away, like you mentioned, from your typical writing style. You typically are pretty personal and introspective in your music, and this one, it focuses on a political issue, somewhat a political issue, a social issue that's not always fans of your music are always familiar with. What do you hope they take away from this listen, other than getting stuck in my head and I'm kind of singing it along?
Well, I tried to infuse this thing with hope. Like I said, I think sometimes, you can feel isolated. You can feel hopeless especially in a situation like this, with addiction. With addiction, people do feel isolated. They feel hopeless. They feel, outside. They feel like, pressed away from society. I think people, like Mitch Hedberg said, like addiction is the only disease you can have that you get yelled at for. It's
true.
And so it's difficult for people. You feel as if, like, a lot of people are treated as if it is some sort of moral failing to be addicted. And I wanted to infuse this song with hope. And and I have written, obviously, songs over the years that are, like, I don't think of this, like you said, I think of this more as a social issue rather than a political thing. But I have over the years written, socially conscious and politically leaning songs. But I don't know, this feels like such a human issue. It's like, this feels very, nonpartisan. Wherever you live, whatever socioeconomic background you come from, you probably know someone who got addicted to opioids. because doctors were giving them out like they were ibuprofen for years. There's
Sure,
like,
even the elderly community, they get them for every little ache and pain, and people don't realize that, but it's multi generational. It doesn't matter what your bank account looks like. It's just your body that fails, and then your doctors give you what you think you need. It's interesting you mentioned about getting yelled at for that. There is a lot of shame in it, and I think it drives the opiate epidemic because there isn't a lot of people that say I have this disease and I'd like to overcome it. There's a certain amount of public shame to it. So I think yeah, that hope, that message of hope definitely runs through that song. I appreciate that. I think in people who have lost family members and stuff like that, I think they'll get something out of the song. Do you think it'll inspire you to write other songs that, or more songs that are a little bit more socially conscious? I mean, you mentioned that you had done that in the past, but your music seems to come from a personal place more than anything. Do you think that you'll maybe include a little bit more of that in the future?
I I don't
Maybe.
know. I never know what I'm gonna make next. Like there's a song that comes to mind that I wrote that's called San Miguel. That's on the Bone Structure album. And that song, it talks about people walking to America, and like no
Mm-hmm.
one walks to America from the South like for fun. Like if they had another option at to stay home, like near their mother and their home, if it was safe, if it was a viable thing, most people would stay home. Most people wouldn't walk 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
People generally volunteer for that. And to me, the notion that some people were saying that these people are just walking here like they just want to, they're just doing it just because, like, and trying to vilify those people, that felt like infuriating to me.
Yeah.
It felt ridiculous, and that felt like an issue that it felt pretty black and white to me. And I felt like you could either be on the side of people who were being exploited and put into a position where they had to walk 1,000 miles carrying their children to try to get somewhere safe, or you could be against those people who were trying to walk 1,000 miles carrying their children. And there was very clearly a right side, and I
Right.
found that so shocking that I wrote a song about it. So I don't know. It's like I didn't know that I would be writing songs about being a father until I became a father.
Right.
I think, like, in general, when I say I'm not a topical songwriter, like in general, I sit down and I kind of reach up into the ether. I don't know, I sit and I play, or I think scribbling in my notebook, whatever. And then something comes to me and I follow the thread. Like I don't necessarily know what I'm going to be talking about until I start moving my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And but sometimes I find myself upset enough or shaken enough by something that I sit down and I say, what if I tried to do this? And in general, to be fair, topical songwriting is hard. It's why there aren't a million good protest songs. It's why you think about, like A Change Is Gonna Come, or Blowing in the
Right.
Wind, or Fortunate Son, or something like that. You think about those songs, and after 50 years and 60 years, those things still feel so powerful. It's because it's hard to write a song that is both very like pointed at something, being socially conscious, and a good song. Like it's one thing to speak on a topic, and it's another thing entirely to write a great song that speaks on a topic. And so I don't know, I'm just kind of always, I never want to do anything that feels like it isn't authentic to what I feel. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to do anything that doesn't feel honest. I don't know. At this point, I've been making albums for 20 years, and I don't know if I'm capable of doing anything other than what feels right to me.
Yeah.
And so I really am focused on that. Like I want to make stuff that feels good to me, and then I'll share it with people when I feel like I've made a recording of it that feels good to me. And then if they like it, then I did a good job in sharing it with them. And if they don't like it, then I didn't do a good job of sharing it with them. And for me, I try to divorce the artistic portion of it from the commercial portion of it. It's like if
Yeah.
I write a song and I believe in it, and then we make a recording and I'm proud of the recording, well, then we put it out in the world, whether it works or not, where it works or not for the audience, it does not invalidate this part that I made a recording that I'm proud of, and it doesn't invalidate this part that I wrote a song that I'm proud of. It certainly is a bummer when you make something that you love and you share it with the world and people don't get it, that is certainly upsetting. But I, having made records for such a long time, I understand at this point that not everything that I like or everything that I believe in is going to resonate with other people, but I don't know any other way to make
You have to
music.
stay true to your art. Obviously, you can't make something to please everyone, because no, you can't do that. It's impossible.
Yeah, and at this juncture in history, it's like you're even the biggest pop artists in the world, their songs are not truly ubiquitous. Like you can look at the Spotify global top 50, the 50 most listened to songs in the world at any given moment. And I oftentimes, when I look at this, haven't heard many of the songs. And it's something I'm very curious about. I check in regularly. And last year, that Mitski record came out, and it
It
apparently
had
was
a lot of streams.
it apparently was everywhere on the internet. And I have listened to her music for years, and I hadn't yet seen it. I hadn't been served any social media stuff about it. So I looked at the Spotify Global Top 50, and she had a song in the top 10. And I was like, Mitski? Like our Mitski? Like like, and I was like, is this a new thing? Is this like a collaboration with, what? And it was her song. And I just hadn't yet heard it. And that's the a kind of striking thing at this point in history. It's like, even the biggest pop artists, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, whatever, they put out a hit single that's humongous and everybody is listening to it. It's not truly ubiquitous, because people can consume music so many different places, and they're making choices. So many less people are listening to terrestrial radio. And so a lot of times people are choosing all the music that they listen to in a day, or they're putting on a streaming service where they pick one song by one artist, and then it's ping-ponging around showing them stuff, but maybe they're not going to ever hear, the newest Ed Sheeran or whatever. And, that's even though whatever, Post Malone is one of the most popular artists in the world, you might never hear the new Post Malone single. And I think that that's something, it should be informative for musicians. It's like good to realize that you're never, even at the highest level of music now, you're never going to reach everyone anymore. And so it's, I think, best to create music that you care about or you believe in, or does whatever you want music to do. And whether that's, speaking on a political topic, writing a love song, making people dance, whatever makes you feel good, whatever you want music to do that, and then try to find people who like that, because it's a losing battle at this time in history, in the history of recorded music, to try to reach all the people, because it's not realistic.
It's not realistic. And in the 20 years of your career, it has changed so much. The industry has changed so much. That it's a completely different beast now. You have to approach it in a completely different way than when you had started in the industry, I'm sure. And obviously, an artist doesn't want to think about the commercialization of their music, but even that has changed. Like you're saying, it's no longer maybe album driven; it's single driven. And like you're saying, if you miss it on Spotify, you might not hear it. So that's a really good point, that it kind of opened my mind to how much things have changed in this business.
Yeah, I mean, and I was kind of I was here at the beginning of music spreading on the internet, which is a very good thing to say, because I don't feel 1,000 years old. But before social media had a name, I got very popular on social media, and we were able to build this grassroots following all over the world, one very enthusiastic person at a time. And then those very enthusiastic people became mouthpieces and spread the music. And I had been trying to do the conventional thing that existed before that. I had been touring and grinding it out on the road in a van, playing for one person in a town, and then 3 people and 5 people, and so on, trying to build an audience, the old-fashioned way. And obviously, there are incredible benefits for new artists to be able to utilize the internet, to be able to utilize social media, because you can be in your room and you can have an idea for a song, and you could have not even finished it, and you can sing it into your phone, and then you could put it on TikTok, and people could go, this is it, this is my song, and people can go crazy with it. I think the beginnings of Zach Bryan's career are a fine example of this, that like, this is just a guy with a guitar singing songs, writing poems, starting out, and it resonated with people in a meaningful way. And then, it got fed into the larger machine, and now it is a juggernaut. It's playing in football stadiums. It's just in a handful of years, because people get it and it resonated with people. But that started with him sharing a bunch of stuff that people connect with on the internet. And I think that that's a really powerful thing. I think that a lot of artists that are not, like 23 or younger, a lot of people that, didn't grow up with like constant access to social media, was like, social media feels like not like they're not natives, they're not digital natives, they're not native to social media. I think for a lot of people it's hard because they signed up and they thought the job was sing and write songs and go on the road, and now they have to make an incredible amount of stuff to put into the internet to reach people. And I know a lot of people that are uncomfortable doing that, and they're great songwriters and singers and performers, and they don't have the desire or the willingness to try to reach out to people within the internet. And it's hard to connect with people if you don't do that at this
juncture. You've done a great job with that. I'm noticing your social media has really gathered the fans behind it. You're telling little family stories, personal little tidbits. I just watched one of you talking about having a conversation with your daughter, and she wanted to create this kind of workforce, and I was laughing about it. And I thought, well, you're really, bearing personal information out there, and fans they love it. I mean, I was reading the comments, and they really like that. Obviously, they like your music and they like you, but they also like to be able to feel like they can get to know you a little bit, and maybe that helps them understand your music a little more, or maybe appreciate it a little more. What has been your experience dealing with fans and your social media rise of fame? Because I've noticed, you're doing really good over there.
Well, like I said, I was making music for a very long time, and then in like the mid-aughts, like 2007, I started to get really popular on the internet, and I was at that point, I got on MySpace very early. My brother is like an early adopter for all things technological, and so like when he got on MySpace, his MySpace was myspace.com/John. That's how.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
That and so old.
So we started really early, like before social media had a name. We were trying to spread music via social media because we saw, other kids that were our age were in there. They were using social media. And I said, well, if this is where people are congregating, maybe there's a way to share music here. And we did. And that really helped. And so over the years, because my actual career, like with this being my job, it began within the universe of social media. We've always been, very conscious of what is happening in the world of social media. We have always done that, me and my team. And so, but for a long time, I felt like I didn't know what to put into the social media universe to reach people. And then recently this happened. There's the stories are such a part of my show. Every show has at least one long story in it. Over the years, it's been stories. I had an opener who I had known since he was a little boy, and I had a crazy story about taking him on the road when he was in the 10th grade, and I was like in my early 20s. I used to tell a long story about racing with my grandfather, foot racing against my grandpa when I was in high school. Over the years, I just had all of these little, tales that I wanted to, tell. Usually there's one really good long one in every show, and then, a few little ones that I'll sprinkle here and there. But I had never really made that a part of social media. And then one day, a few months ago, I told a story. My family got in a fist fight with another family in the parking lot of an IHOP. And a long time ago, when I was a teenager, and
that feels like Waffle House stories, but we'll allow it. We'll allow it for the IHOP.
Waffle House behavior at an IHOP. Yeah. So we, I told that story and people really went nuts. And then I was like, oh, people like this. Maybe I'll tell another story. And then I told a story within the next handful of days of a time at Christmas where my grandmother punched one of her neighbors in the face a whole bunch of times.
I saw that one.
Yes, he got handsy with one of my cousins, and my grandmother went and whooped this dude, this adult man, like a man in his 40s, not like a little old man. She went out and punched this man in the face. It was wild. My family, when this happened, we could not believe it. And so anyway, that one people went nuts about. It got 3 million views on
Yeah.
TikTok, 3 million views on Instagram. And so I was like, oh, people really like these stories. So I've started to share just little tidbits as they come to mind. I argued with the insurance company about a medical bill, so I told them about it, and things like that. And so for me, this is a very natural part of both what I do as an artist. When you come to a show, I tell stories.
Right.
So it didn't feel uncomfortable or inauthentic, because I do, like, if you sit at a long table and it's members of my family are
Mm-hmm.
all around it, someone will tell a very elaborate story, and then the next person will say, no, 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 the best was, and then they will tell a related story, and then someone on the other side of the table might yell, and then remember this, and everybody jumps in, and there's, storytelling is very much a part of the fabric of my people, everybody in my family. My brother just had a bachelor party, and we just did this. We just sat at a table. My dad tells a story, my brother tells a story. It's very natural for me, and it feels like it's something that during my shows, people have often remarked that they feel very connected to the
Sure.
stories. And so for me, that felt normal and natural. And it's certainly, I don't know that it would be for everyone, because not everyone does that. Like, not
Or
everybody.
feels comfortable sharing, or
Yeah.
uncomfortable on social media. A lot of people, musicians, they're comfortable in their craft. They might not be comfortable on camera. You
No, I
seem
mean,
very comfortable on camera.
I'm the same kind of all the time. Like,
Right.
I was sitting the other day, I was playing in Asheville, and I was backstage with my openers, an incredible musician called November South. I was sitting with him and the promoter, and we were all, going back and forth, and I'm putting on my clothes, and I pick up my guitar and I tune it, and I was telling a story, and I was like, all right, I gotta go. And I walked on the stage, and then I just kept, it's a very seamless thing for me. I feel as comfortable on stage talking to an audience as I do talking to an individual. When I was a kid, I was waiting to go on to play a show, and I called my grandma, and I was like, I'm really nervous. And she said, does it make you do a better job to
Hmm.
be nervous? And I said, no. And she said, well, what are you nervous about? I was like, well, that I'm going to mess up. And she said, well, if it doesn't help you do a better job to be nervous, why don't you just stop being nervous? And so, and it feels like an oversimplification, obviously, to kind of intellectualize away stage fright, but that did it for me. And then I don't know, I'm not uncomfortable anymore.
Just authentically you all the time. And I think
I'm
that's
just like
maybe something
this.
that fans like, they find in your music, they find in your social media. This single, though, I've Got to Change or I'm Gonna Die, it's going to be released on your next album in 2025, yet to be titled yet. What are some of the other themes fans can expect on that album from those songs?
Good question. I am hacking away at it. And for me, there's sort of a through line that has run through all of my music since the very beginning, and that is the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the production sounds like, whatever the orchestration is like, the instruments, all of that, the arrangements and the production style, even the genre you might classify it as. In my head, that's all kind of window dressing. And at the
Mm-hmm.
core of it, I've always been telling stories within the music. Whether it's an up-tempo song or a down-tempo song, if it's about heartbreak or falling in love or drug addiction or being a father, whatever it is, I'm trying to tell a story, and that's at the core of what I'm doing. So that hasn't changed since I started writing songs when I was a teenager, and I assume it won't change in the future. So that's really the biggest thing that you'll see in this album is, the kind of storytelling that I think people have come to expect from me.
Are you back in the studio with this album? Because I know the last album you guys did a beach house in Long Island, and it was kind of, you brought it home sort of as, and I guess you were really productive. You like recorded 70 songs or something in that beach house. So are you back in the studio for this album?
Yes, we are back in the studio. And we put together this fun assemblage of my friends. It's a really fun coming together. We scheduled it when weirdly nobody was on tour. And which is like in Nashville is like some kind of,
Impossible.
yeah, it's a
It's a music
miracle.
town.
Yeah, it's basically a miracle. Like our my friend Jerry Pentecost, who has been playing drums, back and forth with me for a long time, he joined Bob Dylan's band. So I called
Oh,
him. I was like, "When are you guys going to be home?" And he was like, "Never. I don't know. It's Bob
yeah,
Dylan."
they're touring now.
He's like, "I think we're going to tour forever." And so, and then luckily, my friend Rob Crowell, who was playing drums in Midland, he was coming in and he was going to play keyboard and some other things, and I was like, okay, now you're the drummer again. So he came to play drums, and now he's in Sturgill's new band. Sturgill just announced he's
Oh,
got a new band. So Rob is now playing keyboards and sax in Sturgill's band. We had Kevin Black, who was with Margot Price for many years. He just also joined Sturgill's band, and it was honestly like Jeff Picker, who's playing with Nickel Creek. Like everybody was just home. Billy Contreras from Ricky Skaggs' band, Seth Taylor, who plays with everybody but is on the road with Sarah Jarosz right now. Like all my friends just happen to be home. It's
you
like
just got lucky. You
yeah,
just got lucky.
it was really wild. We got like Sean Richardson. Seth Taylor forgot that Katie Offerman was going to Texas to open for I think for George Strait.
Oh,
And he was like, "So I gotta go play tomorrow. I have to wake up in the morning and fly to Texas, like to play, whatever for whatever tens of thousands of people opening for George Strait. I totally forgot." He's like, "But I called Sean, and Sean's home, so Sean will come tomorrow and take my place." So Sean came. Luckily, because he's in Sierra Hull's band, and they were off the road. So I got this like incredible confluence of all friends that play, some of my friends that are they do bluegrass stuff and country stuff, and rock band people, and one of our friends is in the Stolen Faces, Jeff Malinowski, which is the
oh
big
yeah.
cover band that everybody loves. And so he was home, and so he's played on a lot of my records and sings a lot of the male harmonies on my records over the years. And so everybody just happened to be around. It was like
You just got lucky.
a happy miracle. And so we have just been finishing that up, and yeah, it looks like it's going to come out next year, barring an act of God. So hopefully I'll finish this, and we'll have the record ready to go, and we'll go back on the road and do the whole thing.
Yeah, and you also released another single a few months ago from that album called "I'm Not the Devil." It's featuring Taylor Pickett. Uh, how did that come about? That collaboration come about, and what were you kind of thinking about when you wrote that song?
Well, the song, I have this cousin. He shows up in a lot of my music. I feel like if I keep writing songs about him, eventually I'm going to have to I'm going to have to start sending him checks or something. I don't know. But I have this cousin, and he had this relationship when we were young where they were really always at odds with each other, but they were also very much in love. And I remember sitting in a party in her backyard, and they broke up at some point, then they got back together, then they broke up again, then they got back together, like all in one evening. And I just remember sitting there like I'm like drunk, holding a beer, leaning against a tree, like, man, this is pretty intense. Like watching them, and me and all the boys, my cousin he was a Marine. He is a Marine. He's in he's not, he's no longer an active duty Marine, but Marines say I am a Marine. They don't say I was a Marine. They are once a Marine, always a Marine. And so, but he was an active duty Marine. They had just gone to Iraq. And I remember I was standing around the open hood of my car with him and a few of our other friends. We're all like holding beers. My car was always on the fritz at this point. We're all looking at it, and like none of us knew how to fix it. None of the obvious things that we knew about were wrong. And we were just talking about how like none of us really knew anything. We didn't know anything yet. We were trying to figure it out. And so all of that's in I'm Not the Devil. Like watching this relationship where I was like, just because these two people weren't meant to be together forever, it doesn't mean that this wasn't a pretty spectacular moment. It's like watching fireworks. Like just because they end, it doesn't mean it wasn't something spectacular for a moment.
Right. And there's still smoke. I mean, fireworks.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a great analogy, actually.
And so that's what the song is about. And the way that I came to include Taylor, I kept getting shown Taylor's lyrics and her singing songs on the internet, like every day. It was ridiculous. It was one of those things where, like, over and over and over again, I just kept seeing them. And finally I was like, all right, I'm going to listen. And I listened. I was like, oh man, like these lyrics are profound, powerful. And so I sent her a message. I was like, hey, like, fuck. Like, oh my God.
I'm blown away.
These lyrics are something else. And she was like, oh my God, funny story. The first song I ever learned to play on guitar was A Drop in the Ocean. And she showed me a video from when she was like, I don't know, like a little girl, and she's playing acoustic guitar like at a summer camp or something, and she's singing A Drop in the Ocean at camp. And I was like, fuck, this makes me feel old. Oh my God, you're an adult. Like, you were a grown woman. This is you as a child singing my song. Oh no. And we laughed about it, but we became friends. We wrote some songs together, and she's such a good singer. And so I thought it might be cool to have her sing on this tune with me. And then we were going on tour together. She came out and opened for me. I invited her to come out and open for me all over the US. And so she did, and we got to sing it on stage together every night, which was a delight. She's such a talent, such a bright light. I really believe that she's like one of the most compelling lyricists I have ever encountered in my life. So I couldn't be more impressed with her. I think she's really magical.
It must have been amazing for her to start off at such a young age with one of your songs, and then later in life go on tour with you. That was amazing for her. You mentioned, though, A Drop in the Ocean. You recently finished the 15th anniversary. It was a sold-out tour for your debut album, Daylight. Congrats on that album, because it's still getting streams like crazy. I think Drop in the Ocean's up like millions of streams at this point. And I personally am a huge fan of that album, as well as the two follow-up albums. Both I had in my wedding, actually. I had Our Song and Fireflies, but both at my wedding. So were you surprised at the longevity of this album, and how was that tour? Was it just amazing?
If I would have known that I would still be singing these songs all these years later, I would have made them much easier to sing. Like some of those songs, Fireflies, and that big moment in the bridge of A Drop in the Ocean with that giant O. Yeah, I would have probably not put that in there if I knew I was going to sing it for the rest of my life. It's
as you're getting older, it's getting a little tougher to hit those notes, huh?
I gotta really bend my knees to get those nowadays. But I had no idea that anyone was going to listen to this music. Like, I was writing the songs for Daylight, my first solo album, over a number of years leading up to when we recorded it. And I couldn't have possibly imagined that people would listen to it, because some of them I was writing when I couldn't rub two tickets together in my hometown. And so,
it sold out. This tour sold out.
Yeah, it was wild. It was really wonderful. And it was an interesting kind of set of constraints, because the album has, I think, 11 or 12 songs on it.
Yeah.
So we play all those songs every night. I promised I would play the whole album every evening. And so, I can't play for 5 hours every night. Mm-hmm. Like, my audience is not, it's not like a Springsteen show where people are like, yeah, and he played for 3.5 hours and it was awesome. Like, if I played for 3.5 hours, nobody would be there at the end. That's a lot. And so I'm conscientious of the fact that, people don't want to hear 50 songs a night. So we had to, those constraints that we needed to play those 12 songs. It was interesting to try to structure a show with that in mind, because Daylight is a fairly down-tempo and mid-tempo album. And so some of the more energetic music that we would generally play that drives the excitement of the full band show, we couldn't, because we didn't have time. And so that was a really interesting challenge. And that's one of the things that I love about taking any of these records on the road. in the studio, you can do anything you want with them. You could have 100 people come in and play on it. You could have a symphony orchestra if you are inclined. But on the road, all you can do is take the people that you have on stage and make whatever you can with those people. And so that is a fun challenge. It's one of the things I love about both the newest music and the oldest music that I have. Mm-hmm. At any given time, my touring band is going to be different than it was the previous year. I don't know if this is luckily or unluckily, but I've had a great eye for talent, it seems, over the years, because so many people go from my band into an arena band or, and that's, I'm glad for my friends, but it does make it so that over time I have to, I'm regularly adding new folks to the fold. And that's that creates some challenges, but it also creates excitement in that we have to reimagine the arrangements as the years go on, as different people come in and people leave the group and stuff. And so that was really fun. That was a fun part about Daylight. Some of those songs have a string quartet. Obviously I'm not touring with a string quartet. Caitlin Rates, who plays in my touring band right now, Caitlin plays cello and she can play violin too. So you can either have the cello or the violin, but that's all the strings you get. And so, figuring out how to make the arrangements feel full with less is a part of going on the road. And so, but the longevity, I couldn't believe anybody liked them to begin with. When this all really started, when people began listening to my music in 2007 and then 2008, I went from, I was like teaching guitar lessons. I was playing music in the subway. I was living in New York and really living, hand to mouth. And then all of a sudden it was like, we sold 1 million digital tracks. And then we sold another 1 million digital tracks. And then that went on, we sold millions and millions and millions of digital tracks and, so many albums. And it went from nobody cares to lots of people care. And then the streaming revolution kind of swept in. And it's like, the songs have gotten hundreds and hundreds of millions of streams. And that's unbelievable to me. I mean, I understand that, at this point, people have access to all of the music that has ever been recorded in the history of the world, basically. And so the fact that people choose to listen to my music at all is unbelievable. Never mind, some of these records are, 5, 10, 15 years old and people are still listening to them. Like someone came up to me on this last tour at the meet and greet, and they were talking about a song from the first album that I made with The District. The District was the band that I was in before I became a solo artist. Mm-hmm. And from the first album that I made with The District, like those are songs that I was writing when I was in college, 18, 19, 20 years old. And, so some of these songs I wrote 20 plus years ago. And so it's astonishing. It was astonishing to me that anybody wanted to listen at all. And it continues to be astonishing that people continue to want to listen. And I am very grateful that people care because, the music means so much to me. Obviously, I've devoted my entire life to it. It's like, it's fine. Like if you're a doctor, people probably don't ask, like, if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing? But when you're a musician or a ball player or something, people do ask that. And I always tell people, like, I don't know. I don't have any other skills. This was my plan A and my plan B and my plan C. At every juncture where I came up against some giant roadblock, I just was like, well, I'm going to find a way around this, or I guess I'll die because I'm not going to give up. Because the music was so important to me. It was such a central part of my life. And so I have just poured everything that I have into this. And so I can't believe that anyone cares about it. And I'm flattered. I'm endlessly flattered.
Is there a song that you get tired of playing, or maybe a song that you never tire of playing? That's a better question. Maybe a song you never tire of playing on stage that comes to mind?
A long time ago now, maybe, I don't know, 12 years ago, something like that. I wrote a song with Michael Bolton. And A Drop in the Ocean had already been popular for a number of
Mm-hmm.
years at that point. And I asked him, because he had just been on tour in Australia at that point, and he's playing some of his songs, had been out for 30 years at that point, 35 years, whatever. And I said, do you ever get sick of playing the same songs, these hit songs that people love so much? And he said, every night when I get on stage, the bulk of the people in the audience have never seen me before. And so for all of those people, it's the first time that they're ever hearing this live in their entire lives. And he said, and even for people who've seen me, a bunch of times, it's like maybe it's been 10 nights in their whole life over the last 35 years that they've heard this music. So I go up there understanding that it's not night 120 of the tour for this audience. It's night number one. It's one of one for them. It's not one show of 200 this year or 50 or whatever it is. It's one of one for most of these people. And I thought that was a really profound thing. I took that to heart. And so for me, the most exciting thing is generally to play the new music, because I love the sort of intellectual exercise of trying to figure out how to make it work on stage. Like I said, you only have however many sets of hands are on stage. That's all there is. However many voices there are on stage. That's all we have to create the sound that you hear out there. And in the studio, it's limitless. And so that's a really fun exercise as a creative person to try to figure out, how do we make this feel good with who is here with us on stage? So honestly, I mean, there are songs that I prefer to play. I love to play. I generally, it's whatever's brand new, because I haven't ever played them before, and that's really fun for me. But there's nothing really that I mind playing, because if people like it and they come for it and they're excited about it, like that's the point of putting the music out. Like I make the music for me, but I put it out into the world in the hopes that I will connect with other people. Like I was a weird kid sitting in my room writing poems, and music helped me feel much less alone in the world. It connected me with people outside of that bedroom. And that's one of the reasons why I take my own music and put it out into the world. It's because I want to find people who might need it and give it to them, and build this community of people who feel connected, not just to me or to my songs, but to each other as well. Like that's what I'm trying to build. So when we are playing a show, the fact that people like these songs and want to hear them, that feels very important to me. And it feels like part of my vocation is to go out in the world. I know my grandpa used to talk about Joe DiMaggio a lot. We're Italian American, and there's only so many like really big Italian American heroes, and he was one of them. And so my grandfather said, DiMaggio would hit a ground ball to the shortstop, definitely going to get thrown out, and he would run as fast as he could to first base. And one of his teammates asked him, why do you do that? You don't have to. And he said, because there's some kid in the stands who's never seen Joe DiMaggio play, and I owe it to that kid to give him my best. And I believe in that. I believe in trying to go out there and play the songs with my whole heart and all of my ability every night. And so I love to get on stage. The rest of being on tour is, kind of a bitch. It's
right. You're just on the road constantly, not a whole lot of sleep, probably.
And just like being, at this point in my life,
family.
I'm away from my family. My daughter is 6 years old, and you miss a month, you miss a lot. I went to Europe last year for 6 weeks, and it was hard. It's hard. I love my wife. It's hard to be away from my wife. I love my daughter. It's hard to miss all these things. She was playing soccer. I missed like almost the whole season because I was gone for 6 weeks, and they're little kids. They don't play for, a long time. And so that's really hard. Being away from home is really hard. And being away from the real stuff that I have to do at home is hard. I have responsibilities. I'm a grown-up. Being on stage, that part feels like an incredible reward. And so I love that, and I never take it for granted, because I went on the road for a very long time where almost no one came to see me. And so to get on stage and play for an audience of people who love the music, I know what it's like to do the inverse of that, to get on stage and play for a mostly empty room of disinterested people. And I am so grateful. I have all the dues paying and bloodletting. I did that for thousands and thousands and thousands of miles. And so I am endlessly grateful. And I know that's, I don't know, corny or cheesy, and musicians love to say that kind of shit, but it's true. I get on stage every night and I feel like I can exhale. I feel free for the first
Right.
time all day. The whole rest of the day, I'm like, fuck, what am I doing out here? And then I get on stage and I'm like, oh, this is what I'm doing out
This
here.
is the reason for it. Well,
Yeah.
this fall you're set to co-headline a tour with fellow acoustic singer songwriter Joshua Radin. How did this collaboration come about with Joshua?
So I planned on staying home the whole rest of this year because I already did a whole lap around the
Right.
US. Obviously, we talked about it. So I already did one. And Joshua's people reached out and they asked if we wanted to do an acoustic tour. And, usually I run around with a large ensemble. I don't generally
Mhm.
go on the road by myself. But it seemed like fun. He's got beautiful songs. He sings in such a lovely way. People are so struck by, his music is so delicate and so lovely. And so I figured could be a really nice opportunity to go out and try something very different. We're going to co-headline, so we're not going to have an opener. We're each going to play full length sets as if we were there by ourselves.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it should be a really fun evening, and he's just such a wonderful talent. So I'm excited to go out and I'm going to visit some places that I haven't been in a long time. I'm going to visit some places that I've never been before, and it should be really lovely. I can't wait to do, it's so different than the last tour. Like there were
Right.
7 people in the ensemble on the last tour, and now it's just going to be me all by
Yeah.
myself, with my acoustic guitar, with a piano, and I'll get the opportunity to try something different every night. Like if I decide on the spot that I want to try a song, if I can remember how it goes, I can play it. I don't have to teach it to anybody. And that's I don't always love playing alone because I come from a band background. I grew up fronting a rock band, running around playing electric guitar, kind of a southern rock outfit where I was like part, I don't know, Springsteen, part Hendrix. Like I wanted to play
Right.
guitar solos and sing and front the band. And so I really was never interested in playing by myself. But in the last bunch of years, I've kind of come around to it because when I go out and I do some of these acoustic shows, the reaction is people were just so excited. The reaction is so positive that it makes me feel like there's real value in it for the people who are watching. Like they seem to care, and that makes me feel like it's a worthy thing to do some of the
Well,
time.
you're also going to the UK. You're doing live performances for the Long Road Festival in August. What are you looking forward to in that gig?
Well, that's a really fun country and roots festival over there. Some of my friends have some of my friends have played it the last handful of years. And so it should be a really good time. I have a buddy who used to be my band leader for my European band. He lives in London. His name's Ryan Ansa. And Ryan put us together a great band for this. So we're going to go, and I think we're going to road test some of these new songs and play some old favorites. And so I'm just excited to get over there and play with them and try. I'm especially excited to put some of these new songs on their feet for the first time ever.
Right. Kind of gauge the audience reaction, see how it plays. What would you like to say to those fans who are definitely showing up to your shows, dial into all your social media, can't wait for the next album to come out? What would you like to say to them? Because I think your beautiful music has touched them. I certainly put it in my wedding. It touched me. So what would you like to say to them?
I appreciate you for showing up. I know that you could be somewhere else. And so thank you for not, listening to the Beatles or watching the Mighty Ducks or whatever, and instead coming and listening to my music. So I appreciate you all so much.